Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I blew my car's tire and my friend came in to bail me out. We're both straight dudes and forgot it was Valentine's. Decided to have dinner and both were coming from important meetings so had suits on. We didn't catch on until the end on how the entire wait staff thought we were just the cutest gay couple. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement, they wanted champagne, a specific seat, bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, so I read, we're celebrating an engagement, congratulations. Confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet, she ruined it. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl and I was left to clean the mess. These two were on a date and the guy went to go use the bathroom. The girl just up and leaves after he went to the restroom. When the guy came back he sat around for a while until asking his waitress where she went. She replied with saying that she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning, the guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant. I don't understand why some people think it's a thing to break up at a restaurant. Dump me in private, please. If we have plans to go out, dump me beforehand. Not a waiter, but in my strip club bouncer days we had one of our regulars get suited up and bring flowers in 1v day to try and woo one of the dancers. It did not work. Pro tip, if every time y'all hang out it involves you giving her money, she is not into you. He proposed, she said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony-faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there, it was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled, or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer, and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available, and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and then the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man. Too long, didn't read. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later." Edit. If anyone wants to use this for a sitcom, feel free. Just let me reprise my role as the waiter and we can call it even. Not waitstaff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the coos, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the shit out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic, and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything, the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser. I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. I had a Section 1V day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. I used to be a waiter in a 5-star restaurant. It was my first week. One guy was about to propose. It was obvious by how much he was sweating he was drenched. I tried to make them both relax. They went on to finish up their meal. As soon as the cake arrived he then went on one knee. She stood up suddenly. He vomited right on her high heels. After the shock of what just happened she still ended up saying yes, flushed face. Not a waiter but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have "Will you marry me?" written on it so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen, even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in. They asked if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine. He said it took him a week to perfect. Here's a meme for you to enjoy while you're subscribing to our channel. We'll have new videos for you every day, so stay tuned. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. Edit. I don't consider Chili's a fine dining experience. My wife and I had done some shopping and stopped off for a burger and beer afterwards. Walking back to my dorm room once a guy was carrying roses. I think this was around Valentine's Day. I don't remember, and he handed one to me. Made my day because it had been a crappy long day, but I wonder what kind of day he had to be having to be handing out roses to strangers. Frown. Had a couple sign divorce papers and cry a bunch. A guy proposed to his girlfriend and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue, because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw up his hands momentarily in exasperation, but I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant arms straight up Kermit the Frog style. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring in the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes, so romance isn't quite dead yet. Don't you know what happens when kids that young get married? It's all romance until the mutual suicide. At least their families might stop their bloody feud. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up, and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Edited to add, I don't know if she said yes. My manager didn't get to see them at the hospital, only pass on her teeth to the nurse. Thank you kindly for the gold and silver though. Bus boy on Las Vegas Strip. An attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring. They found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Untitled Goose Game. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand, and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish," then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of "we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me" that really did it for me. That reminds me when my parents got me a huge strawberry-filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. So, in college I waited tables and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. You gotta think that your wife might think something is up when you're busy on Valentine's Day. Yeah, this guy doesn't seem to be the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Had a man and woman sharing dessert and the man playfully put a bit of the ice cream on her nose. She then did the same and he did it back once more but with a different flavor of ice cream. She flipped out at him because "You know I like chocolate the most, why would you waste it, you idiot." In the end she stormed out cause the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. Too long didn't read. Man put ice cream on woman's nose. She is fine with it the first time. The second time she rages and leaves. Yeah, sounds like she's got a lot of baggage hidden somewhere. This was relayed to me by a close friend, older woman, probably in her upper 90s with her teenaged grandson at a semi-classy restaurant. She was dressed to the nines and the grandson was in a nice button-up and dress slacks. As they got seated at their table the grandson placed a framed photo of what my friend assumed was the boy's grandfather and husband of the older women. Found out it would have been their 70th wedding anniversary but he had passed suddenly but peacefully a few months back. The grandfather had always wanted to take her to a nice restaurant but never had the time or money to do it. So the grandson saved up his pay from the last couple of months and even got some donations from other relatives and took her to the restaurant. They ate dinner remembering all the good times with the man. They had my friend to take a picture and she did. They tipped my friend very well. By happenstance my friend ran into the young man some weeks later to find out the grandmother passed away a few days after that night, peacefully in her sleep holding a photo of her beloved husband. He was so happy he could make that night special to her. Said it was the only day he saw her smile since his grandfather passed away. He got the picture they took at the restaurant printed and wallet sized and carried it around with him in his wallet. Edit. Fixed some spelling and added more details after speaking with my friend again. I am not a great writer so this might diminish the story. I tried though. Thank you for the award. And I posted this to bring something a little different to the thread other than cheating spouses. It's sad because the lady lost her soulmate of 70-something years. Before Valentine's Day, which also would have been their wedding anniversary. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant and Valentine's Day was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out. But I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off and we'd just have to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out, came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say we didn't go out again. Ever. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full Stella on a lady. I work in a causal fine dining steakhouse. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding and her husband said from across the table, "Well, now she has to take her pants off." So that could have gone worse for me. Why did you set your hair on fire before spilling on the lady? Just to feel alive? Candles are my enemy. I have belly button long hair frown.